Hey guys, tonight we are stepping back into one of the most mysterious and awe-inspiring civilizations in history, the ancient Egyptians. Picture it. You stand in the heart of a bustling Egyptian marketplace by the Nile, with sunlight gleaming off the pyramids in the distance, and a gentle breeze drifting from the riverbank. You can feel the ancient land around you, alive with stories and mysteries waiting to be uncovered. But what if we told you that the Egyptians, known for their majestic monuments and legendary gods, had a secret, one that involved manipulating time itself? Now imagine you could walk alongside these ancient people, but with the power to move through time. Ancient Egypt, with its fascination for the afterlife, cycles, and eternity, might just have been the perfect culture to unlock the power of time travel. Ancient Egyptian beliefs were deeply rooted in the concept of cycles, from the daily cycles of the sun to the celestial cycles of life and death. Time wasn't a linear progression like we think of it today. For the Egyptians, time was fluid, circular, and often repetitive, a constant flow of past, present, and future. Historians still debate whether the Egyptians, in their wisdom and spirituality, could have had a unique understanding of time far ahead of their contemporaries. Could they have used time travel not just to witness events of the future, but to influence them? The answer, as we'll explore, lies in the mysteries they left behind. The cryptic texts, the gigantic structures they built, and the very concepts of the afterlife that suggest they might have believed in the possibility of moving between timelines. But before we dive into how they might have used time travel, we need to understand the concept of time as the Egyptians saw it. You see, the Egyptians didn't view time as something to simply measure. It was a sacred, cyclical force that affected everything, from the flood of the Nile to the rise and fall of their empire. The Egyptians believed in the eternal nature of the soul, and the concept of time was intimately connected to their religious and spiritual beliefs. Time wasn't something to be controlled, it was something to be understood and harnessed. Could they have used their advanced understanding of time to travel through it? Let's find out as we look into the different ways Egyptians viewed and interacted with time. Now picture yourself in the Temple of Karnak, gazing at the ancient hieroglyphs that cover the walls. These symbols, which tell the stories of gods, kings, and everyday life, aren't just depictions of the past. What if these inscriptions were also blueprints, showing the path to manipulating time? Could these temples, with their vast halls and sacred energy, have been portals to different times, past and future, where the gods themselves could travel? The Egyptians believed that the gods had dominion over time, and their mastery over time was reflected in their architecture, art, and rituals. Historians argue whether the Egyptians' devotion to their gods might have led them to believe in time manipulation. Some scholars point to the mysterious Book of the Dead and its descriptions of the soul's journey through time and space, claiming that it could represent an understanding of the flow of time across multiple dimensions. What if these sacred texts, instead of being just spiritual guides, also held hints of time travel technology hidden in plain sight? So, as you walk deeper into the heart of ancient Egypt, imagine this. What if the Egyptians knew that time wasn't simply an abstract concept to be pondered? They believed it was something that could be physically traversed. What if their priests and pharaohs, with their vast knowledge of the cosmos and the supernatural, used advanced rituals or even arcane devices to travel through the timelines, witnessing the rise of their civilization and the fall of others? Could time travel have been a spiritual tool in the hands of those with divine power, allowing the pharaohs to see the past, predict the future, or even change the course of history? These are the questions we'll explore as we look deeper into how the Egyptians might have navigated time just as they navigated the stars. As we continue to immerse ourselves in the incredible possibilities of time travel in ancient Egypt, Let's dive deeper into how the pharaohs, those divine rulers of Egypt, could have wielded the power of time. You've already learned that the Egyptians viewed time as a cyclical force, intertwined with their beliefs in the afterlife and eternal life. But how could the pharaohs, considered living gods, use time travel to extend their reigns and influence the course of their kingdom and perhaps the world? Pharaohs were seen as the earthly representatives of Horus, the god of kingship and the protector of Egypt. The Egyptians believed that pharaohs had the ability to commune with the divine and were imbued with supernatural powers. If they could communicate with gods, why not also manipulate time? Imagine a pharaoh using time travel to witness key events in Egypt's past and future, ensuring the stability of his rule and the success of his people. What if the pharaoh could visit the future, observe the decline of his empire, and return to the present with knowledge on how to avert disaster? Or perhaps, even more powerfully, the pharaoh could reshape the past, preventing the rise of any rival kingdoms or conquering new lands with knowledge from future conflicts. Historians still argue whether the pharaoh's powers were entirely symbolic or whether they truly had access to divine wisdom. But let's explore the possibility that these rulers had a means to manipulate time. Ancient Egyptians were experts in astronomy and mathematics, and their precise measurements of time, celestial bodies, and the movements of the stars suggest that they had an advanced understanding of the universe. Could this knowledge have led to a kind of temporal technology? If the pharaohs possessed such knowledge, would they have used it to their advantage, viewing events before they happened and changing their strategies accordingly? But what if time travel wasn't a tool for the pharaoh alone? What if the entire priesthood of Egypt, revered for their wisdom and power, had access to time manipulation? These priests were not only spiritual guides, they were also keepers of ancient knowledge and mystical secrets passed down through generations. The priesthood had control over Egypt's most sacred rituals and teachings, and it is conceivable that they possessed knowledge of time as a force which they could harness for divine purposes. These rituals performed in the great temples of Egypt could have been more than simple prayers or offerings. Perhaps they were a way to alter the fabric of time itself, allowing the gods to intervene in the natural order and even guide Egypt's future. Imagine then a high priest performing a sacred ritual, not just to appease the gods, but to send a message across time. What if they could influence decisions in the past, directing the pharaohs toward actions that would ensure Egypt's dominance over centuries? The ability to travel through time might have been seen as a divine gift, something that allowed Egypt's rulers and priests to preserve their eternal reign, far beyond what was naturally possible. But how would this time travel actually work? The Egyptians believed that the Nile River was a source of life, and it is possible that this river, which flowed through the heart of Egypt, might have been linked to time itself. If we think of the river as a metaphor for the flow of time, perhaps the pharaohs and priests believed that the river was a conduit to both the past and future, guiding them through the ages. The temples, aligned with celestial bodies, might have served as portals, gateways that allowed access to different periods of time. The grand architecture of Egypt, with its precise alignment with the stars and the earth, could have been designed not only to honor the gods, but also to harness the cosmic energy that enabled time travel. At this point, you might be asking yourself, how could these ancient rituals have impacted time, especially considering that the concept of time travel as we know it today didn't exist in their worldview? Well, it's important to remember that time travel, as we think of it, doesn't necessarily have to follow the same rules that modern science dictates. The Egyptians' understanding of time was fluid, connected to the cycles of the moon, the seasons, and the movement of the stars. What if their rituals didn't involve physical time machines or futuristic technologies, but instead harnessed spiritual power to travel through time? The connection between the divine and the pharaoh was seen as sacred and absolute. What if this connection was not just spiritual but temporal as well? Could it be that time itself was the ultimate tool the pharaohs wielded to maintain control over Egypt? What if their reign wasn't just about military might and architecture, but also about having access to the flow of time, using it to their advantage in ways we can't even imagine today? As we continue our exploration, think about the possibility that time travel wasn't just a concept of science fiction, but a part of the ancient Egyptian worldview, woven into their beliefs, their rituals, and their understanding of the universe. Could the pharaohs have been the ultimate time travelers, able to manipulate history and shape the course of their kingdom in ways that still baffle historians today? As we continue to explore the intriguing possibility of time travel in ancient Egypt, we must now consider the profound influence of their spiritual and religious beliefs on their potential to manipulate time. The Egyptians were not just interested in controlling the physical world. They believed that the gods themselves governed the forces of nature, including the flow of time. If the gods controlled time, then perhaps the pharaohs and priests had access to the divine power to navigate or even bend it to their will. The Egyptian gods were often seen as immortal beings, existing outside of the normal flow of time. The gods were believed to be both present in the world and eternal. They existed beyond the boundaries of time, where the past, present, and future were all interwoven. The god Ra, for example, was the embodiment of the sun, which was seen as a symbol of the cyclical nature of time. Its rising and setting mirrored the constant renewal of life. But what if Ra's power went beyond just the daily journey of the sun? Could the gods have wielded time in a more active, conscious way, intervening in the events of the world at will? The ancient Egyptians believed that time itself was a kind of divine force, and it was through their connection with the gods that they might have been able to harness this power. In the temples and sacred spaces, rituals were performed to honor the gods, but perhaps these rituals were also a means of manipulating time. When the pharaoh or high priests conducted ceremonies, it is possible they weren't just performing symbolic acts. They could have been performing time-altering rituals designed to bring future events into the present or change the course of history. Consider the Book of the Dead, the sacred Egyptian text that guided the soul of the deceased through the afterlife. The text didn't just guide the soul through a journey to the underworld. It depicted the soul's movement through different dimensions of existence, potentially signifying a kind of temporal journey. What if these ancient texts held not just spiritual wisdom, but a blueprint for time manipulation? The gods, after all, were believed to exist outside of time. So could their teachings have included ways to traverse time itself? Historians still argue whether the Egyptians' understanding of the afterlife was meant to be a literal journey through time and space, or if it was more of a metaphorical concept intended to express the eternal nature of the soul. However, what if the Egyptians truly believed that time was not linear, and that after death a person could experience different times, moving through both the past and future? Could the afterlife itself have been a form of time travel? And if so, could the pharaohs and their priests have used these beliefs to navigate different times while still alive? The mysteries of the afterlife are deeply intertwined with Egyptian cosmology, and if we look at their mythological stories, it's clear that the Egyptians had a complex view of time. For instance, the myth of Osiris, the god of death, resurrection, and the afterlife, presents the idea of a cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The resurrection of Osiris wasn't just a spiritual event. It symbolized the eternal cycle of time itself. Could this cyclical concept of time have been the key to the Egyptians' potential manipulation of time? If the gods could come back from the dead, and if the pharaohs were considered to be the living embodiment of a god, then perhaps the pharaohs had the divine ability to reset time and alter historical outcomes. Imagine a scenario where the Pharaoh, in his divine wisdom, used rituals to predict the future, not just for military gain or political power, but to shape the fate of his people. Could he have seen the fall of Egypt and then used temporal magic to avert it? The implications of this would be enormous. Time travel would have been a tool of power, one that could potentially allow the pharaohs to maintain an eternal rule by manipulating the fabric of history itself. But of course, with great power comes great responsibility. The Egyptians believed that the gods were responsible for the balance of the universe, ensuring that order, Ma'at, was preserved. Could tampering with time have upset that balance? Would it have led to disastrous consequences if a pharaoh had meddled too much with the flow of time? Historians still debate whether the Egyptians' obsession with immortality and the afterlife was a way of mastering time or simply accepting the cyclical nature of life and death. Could the pharaohs have seen time travel as a means to gain eternal dominion, or did they fear that such power could be too dangerous to wield? As we look deeper into Egyptian history, we find that their understanding of time wasn't simply based on physical measurement, but also on spiritual and cosmic cycles. The Nile River, which flooded annually, was seen as a symbol of life's eternal renewal. Could the Nile, with its constant flow, have also been a symbol of time itself, serving as a conduit for the pharaohs to traverse through different periods in Egyptian history? The Egyptians believed that everything in the universe was connected, the stars, the earth, and the gods all intertwined to create a harmonious existence. What if the pharaohs could tap into these connections, using the cosmic energy of the universe to move through time? Perhaps they could not only see the future, but they could also bring the future to the present, altering the course of their civilization by making decisions that would change the future. As we continue, consider the profound possibilities. Could ancient Egyptian rituals, based on divine connection and the afterlife, have enabled these rulers to change the course of history? Not through war, but through their mastery of time. Could they have used time travel to solidify their reign and ensure Egypt's eternal power? Let's explore further and uncover the secrets hidden in the past, present, and future. Now that we've explored the profound connection between ancient Egyptian spiritual beliefs and the potential for time manipulation, let us dive into how these mystical practices might have served as the very gateway to time travel itself. The Egyptians were not only experts in architecture and astronomy, but they also had an intricate understanding of mysticism, rituals, and the supernatural. Could these practices have been part of a secret knowledge, hidden wisdom passed down through generations that allowed them to harness the flow of time? One of the most important aspects of Egyptian mysticism was their belief in the cosmic order. The concept of Ma'at, which represented balance, harmony, and truth. Ma'at was not just a concept for maintaining social order. It was tied to the very fabric of the universe itself, ensuring that everything moved in perfect harmony. Time, for the Egyptians, wasn't simply a measurement of moments passing. It was a force woven into the very structure of existence. Could this understanding of time, intertwined with the cosmic order, have given the Egyptians the tools to manipulate it? Let us imagine for a moment. You are a high priest in a grand Egyptian temple, standing before an ancient altar. The incense swirls around you as you prepare for a sacred ritual. You close your eyes and begin chanting the ancient words of power. As you speak, the cosmic energies around you shift, and in that instant, time itself seems to stretch. You're not just speaking to the gods. You're speaking across time, connecting to the past, future, and the present. You sense the timeless flow of the universe, as if the walls of time are made of liquid, and you can reach through them, altering the events of the world with a single command. This wasn't just fantasy for the Egyptians, it was their reality. Rituals were deeply connected to their understanding of time and the afterlife. The Book of the Dead, for example, is filled with incantations that guide the soul through the afterlife. But what if these incantations weren't just spiritual guidance? What if they were keys to navigating time itself? The Egyptians believed that the soul's journey through the afterlife was one that involved moving through different realms of existence. Perhaps these realms weren't just spiritual, but temporal, allowing the soul to travel both across time and space. But it wasn't just priests and spiritual leaders who had access to such knowledge. The Pharaoh, as the earthly representative of the gods, would have had the ultimate authority to perform rituals that altered the course of history. Imagine a pharaoh stepping into one of the grand temples, surrounded by his court, and using these ancient rituals to witness the future. Could he have seen the fall of his empire and returned to the present with the wisdom to avoid it? Or perhaps he could have looked into the distant future to see what technologies or strategies would keep Egypt on top for centuries to come. One of the most fascinating aspects of Egyptian mysticism was their obsession with immortality. While most ancient cultures saw death as the end, the Egyptians viewed it as just another stage in the cycle of life. The mummification process was not just about preserving the body, it was about preserving the soul for eternity. And what if this eternal cycle wasn't just limited to the afterlife? What if it also allowed the Egyptians to manipulate time in a way we can't even imagine? Could the Egyptians have used their understanding of eternal life to achieve a form of time travel, an ability to experience multiple lifetimes, visit the future, or even return to a time before their reign? Historians still debate the extent of Egyptian knowledge of the afterlife and its connection to time, but what if the key to their immortality was temporal travel? The idea of traveling through time isn't as far-fetched as it may seem. The Egyptians were highly sophisticated in their understanding of the heavens, and their alignment of the pyramids with the stars suggests a deep knowledge of cosmic rhythms. Could these rhythms be tied to the movement of time itself, allowing the pharaohs to manipulate time in ways we can only imagine? Let's take a step back for a moment and think about the mathematics and astronomy behind Egyptian architecture. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, is aligned with such precision that it still amazes modern scientists. The Egyptians understood the movement of the stars and planets in a way that allowed them to design monuments that captured the essence of the cosmic order. Could these calculations have been part of a larger blueprint for time manipulation, allowing the Egyptians to chart not just the stars, but also the movement of time itself? As we continue to explore this idea, let us consider the role of sacred sites like the temples of Karnak and the Valley of the Kings. These monumental locations were not only physical spaces, they were spiritual and cosmic portals. What if these temples were designed as gateways not just to the afterlife, but to different points in time? Could the walls of these temples, covered in hieroglyphs, hold the keys to unlocking time travel, allowing priests and rulers to shift between timelines and observe history as it unfolded? Now let's imagine this. A pharaoh steps into the temple of Karnak, knowing that this sacred space allows him to travel across time. He could witness the construction of the pyramids, the rise of his empire, and even the eventual fall of Egypt. The possibilities for how this could impact his rule are endless. He could see the future and use that knowledge to change the course of Egypt's destiny. But as we'll see in the next section, tampering with time could come at a cost, one that might disrupt the very balance that the Egyptians worked so hard to maintain. As we venture deeper into this imagined world where ancient Egyptians could have used time travel, we must confront an intriguing question. What would the consequences have been if they had begun manipulating time to alter their fate? Time, as they understood it, was not a mere progression of events. It was an interconnected, cyclical force that governed both the physical and spiritual realms. So while time travel could have offered unimaginable opportunities, it could have also carried tremendous risks. risks that might have been felt not just in the world of the living, but in the realm of the gods themselves. The Egyptians were fiercely protective of Maat, the concept of cosmic order, which ensured that everything in the universe was balanced and in harmony. Disruptions to Maat, whether through meddling with the natural world, breaking sacred laws, or perhaps altering time itself, were considered deeply dangerous. Could time travel have thrown the world into chaos? If the Pharaoh or the priests had used time travel to rewrite history, would it have caused the balance of the universe to shatter, resulting in divine retribution? Historians still argue over the Egyptians' view of fate. Did they believe their gods had already predetermined the course of history, or did they see their rulers as able to shape their future by understanding the divine order? What if these sacred beliefs were so intertwined with their understanding of time that any attempts to alter it would have upset the natural flow? Could the gods have intervened, preventing the pharaohs from using their power over time? Consider the Temple of Karnak again, one of the largest and most important religious sites in Egypt. It was believed to be the seat of Amun-Ra, the god of the sun and creation, whose power extended across time and space. Could the priests at Karnak, with their divine knowledge of the heavens, have used the temple's sacred rituals to not just predict the future, but to access different timelines? If so, the pharaohs, as representatives of Amun-Ra on Earth, might have sought to control these timelines to strengthen Egypt's position on the world stage. They could travel to the future, ensure the prosperity of Egypt, and avoid the mistakes of past rulers. But in doing so, they might have risked unleashing chaos that no mortal could control. Think about the possibility of changing the future. If the Pharaoh could have witnessed the fall of Egypt hundreds of years in advance, he might have returned to his own time, armed with the knowledge of how to prevent it. This could mean altering key decisions, perhaps interfering with political alliances, military campaigns, or economic systems that were destined to fail. If the Pharaoh had used time travel to see these events unfold and then tried to rewrite history, would it have resulted in Egypt avoiding the collapse, or would it have created a different set of problems, potentially leading to an even worse fate? What if the gods, seeing the pharaoh's attempts to manipulate time, intervened to restore the balance? Ancient Egyptian religion often focused on maintaining order, and any disturbance in this order was believed to upset the harmony of the world. The idea of the gods responding to a time manipulation crisis isn't far-fetched within the Egyptian belief system. After all, the gods were the keepers of cosmic order. If a mortal like the Pharaoh tried to bend time to his will, it's possible that the gods would have stepped in to correct any disturbances, enforcing the natural flow of time and ensuring that no one, no matter how powerful, could alter the course of history. Historians still argue whether the pharaoh's power was a gift from the gods or a result of their own cunning. Some believe the pharaohs were not just divine rulers, but also temporal agents who could influence the world through rituals and sacred knowledge. But if the pharaohs did possess time-manipulating powers, we must consider the moral implications of using such powers. Should the pharaoh have been allowed to alter the timeline to ensure the survival of Egypt, or would it have been a violation of divine order? Would the gods have allowed this to continue, or would they have seen it as an act of hubris, one that needed to be stopped at all costs? Now imagine the pharaoh using time travel to explore the future of Egypt. He could witness the rise of new powers, the fate of his descendants, or the future of his empire. This knowledge could be used to build a stronger, more secure Egypt. But could such knowledge also come with a heavy burden? What if the pharaoh, seeing his kingdom's inevitable collapse, became paralyzed by the knowledge of its fall? Could foreseeing the future bring more harm than good, especially when the pharaoh realizes that no matter what he does, some events might be unavoidable? Could this knowledge create a time loop where the pharaoh attempts to rewrite the past, only to find that his actions lead to the very collapse he was trying to avoid. Imagine that the Pharaoh, in trying to change history, ends up accelerating Egypt's downfall through the very choices he made after witnessing its future. The philosophical implications of such time travel are immense, and the Egyptians, with their deep belief in the cosmic order, might have seen the future as something that should remain beyond human reach. They might have believed that the gods alone should control time, and that human attempts to alter time could cause a cosmic imbalance. In fact, time travel might have been viewed as a dangerous pursuit, one that could open the floodgates of chaos and destroy the natural rhythms of the universe. So let us pause for a moment and reflect on this question. If the Pharaoh had access to time travel, would it have been a blessing or a curse for Egypt? Could such power have preserved Egypt's grandeur and brought about an eternal reign, or would it have unleashed unforeseen consequences that even the gods could not control? As we continue to delve into the realm of time travel and its potential in ancient Egypt, let us shift our focus from the grand powers of the pharaohs and the gods to something that might seem a bit more grounded: the role of Egyptian priests. These highly learned individuals were the guardians of knowledge, holding secrets that went beyond the usual political power of the pharaohs. But what if these priests also had access to temporal knowledge, a knowledge that allowed them to travel through time or influence the past and future? Could the priests, with their mystical knowledge, have been the true time travelers of ancient Egypt? The priests in ancient Egypt were not just religious figures, they were also scholars, scientists, and advisors to the pharaohs. They were the keepers of the most sacred rituals, and their knowledge of the cosmos, magic, and the afterlife was believed to be unmatched. Many historians believe that the priests had access to knowledge that was so profound, it could have allowed them to unlock the mysteries of time itself. Could their extensive study of the stars, the cycles of nature, and the movement of the heavens have led them to an understanding of time that was beyond anything we can comprehend today? Egyptian temples, like the Grand Temple of Karnak and the Temple of Luxor, were often aligned with celestial bodies. These temples were considered sacred spaces where the gods could communicate with the living. What if these temples weren't just designed for worship, but also as cosmic gateways? The priests, trained in the sacred rituals, might have used these spaces not just to invoke the gods, but also to manipulate the fabric of time. Could these temples have served as portals to different times, allowing priests to enter different historical periods or even alter the course of Egypt's history? Now let's imagine a scene. You're an Egyptian priest, standing in the center of a massive temple, surrounded by sacred incense and the murmurs of your fellow priests. As you begin the ritual, the air thickens, and the flickering oil lamps cast eerie shadows on the walls. The temple, built with precise astronomical alignment, seems to come alive. You close your eyes, mutter the ancient words of power, and suddenly you feel a shift. The world around you disappears, and you find yourself standing in a different era, perhaps thousands of years in the past, or in a future yet to unfold. What if these rituals weren't just spiritual practices, but time-altering mechanisms? Could the priests, through their knowledge of the divine and the cosmos, have had access to time itself, moving between eras, witnessing key events in Egypt's past, and even shaping the future? What if the sacred knowledge of the Egyptians was more than just philosophy or religion? It was a code for manipulating time. The Egyptians were also known for their extensive astronomical knowledge. They charted the movements of the stars and planets with such precision that they could predict solar eclipses and understand the tides of the Nile. But could their knowledge have extended to a deeper, more cosmic understanding? One that allowed them to see the flow of time as a fluid, changeable force. The idea that time is cyclical rather than linear was deeply ingrained in Egyptian thought. If time were cyclical, Perhaps the priests could move backward or forward within the cycles of history. This concept of cyclical time would have been especially powerful in ritualistic practices. Imagine a priest using time travel as a tool to guide Egypt's fate, visiting past rulers to learn from their triumphs and mistakes, or traveling to the future to bring back knowledge that could shape the present. Perhaps the sacred rituals were designed to connect the priests to alternate timelines, allowing them to act as intermediaries between different versions of Egypt's future. The priests might have seen their role as not only guiding the pharaohs, but also ensuring that Egypt's eternal empire would remain undisturbed by the ravages of time. Let's pause and think about the implications of this. If the priests had access to time travel, would they have used it only for the benefit of Egypt, or would they have intervened in global history? Could they have seen the rise of other empires, the fall of their own, or the fate of distant civilizations? Would they have used this power to alter history, or would they have seen it as something too sacred and dangerous to tamper with? But time travel, as we've seen in many stories and theories, isn't always without its risks. If the priests could travel through time, could they have inadvertently caused disruptions in the timeline? Could their interventions have led to unintended consequences, upsetting the balance of Egypt's history, or perhaps even the flow of time itself? If the gods were believed to govern all of creation, would they have allowed such manipulation, or would they have punished those who dared to alter the course of fate? The ancient Egyptians, with their complex understanding of the cosmos, life and death, might have believed that the gods gave them the tools to manipulate time. However, like the pharaohs, the priests were still bound by the cosmic order, and tampering with time might have been seen as an offense against the gods. So, while the priests may have used their knowledge to influence time, they may have also understood the delicate balance between controlling time and allowing it to unfold naturally. As we continue to explore the potential of time travel in ancient Egypt, it is important to remember that the priesthood wasn't just a religious class. It was a gatekeeper of knowledge and a powerful influence on the pharaohs. Their role in Egyptian society went far beyond mere spiritual guidance. Could they have been the true masters of time, working behind the scenes to steer Egypt's destiny? As we continue our journey through the time-traveling possibilities of ancient Egypt, let us now turn our focus to one of the most intriguing aspects of their culture, the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that life didn't end with death. Instead, they saw it as a continuation of existence in a different realm, a spiritual journey that transcended time. But what if their profound beliefs in the afterlife weren't simply metaphysical concepts? What if the Egyptians viewed the afterlife as a different dimension of time, one that allowed the soul to experience multiple lives, to travel through time, and to exist simultaneously in different eras? The Book of the Dead, one of the most famous Egyptian texts, outlines the journey of the soul through the afterlife. It wasn't just a guide for the deceased. It was a manual for transcending time. Imagine, if you will, a soul journeying through the afterlife, passing through different gates, encountering gods, and moving through timeless realms. What if the afterlife itself was a form of time travel? A place where the soul could travel backward to relive moments in history or forward to witness the future. The Egyptians were obsessed with the idea of eternal life, and the rituals they practiced to ensure this immortality were meticulously planned. But if they believed the soul could transcend time in the afterlife, could their understanding of the eternal journey have given them the tools to manipulate time while still alive? Could the Egyptians have used their spiritual practices to enter different timelines and observe events not just from their own time, but from other historical periods as well? Historians still debate whether the Egyptians' view of the afterlife was meant to be literal or symbolic. But what if the afterlife wasn't just a metaphor for spiritual immortality? It was a place where time ceased to exist as we know it, and the soul could move freely through different epochs. Could the rites of passage into the afterlife have been a form of time travel for the soul, allowing it to access different times and alternate realities of existence? Let's step into the world of the afterlife and imagine that time is not a constant, but a fluid and bendable force. In the Egyptian belief system, the soul was often described as being reunited with the gods. This reunion could mean that the soul, while living, had access to divine knowledge, including knowledge of time itself. Perhaps these gods weren't just guiding the souls of the dead, but were also keeping the threads of time in check, allowing souls to move through time and experience different realities as part of their eternal journey. Now consider the significance of mummification, a process that the Egyptians believed preserved the body for eternity. The mummified bodies of the deceased were often placed in elaborate tombs, surrounded by treasures to ensure comfort in the afterlife. But what if mummification wasn't just about preserving the body? It was also about preserving the soul's connection to time. Perhaps the very act of preserving the body in this way was an attempt to anchor the soul to a particular moment in time, allowing it to revisit that time whenever it wished, thus enabling the soul to travel through different points in history. As the pharaohs were believed to be gods on earth, it's possible that they too had a deeper understanding of time than most others. What if the pharaohs didn't just rule over Egypt? They ruled over time itself. By using their divine status and their connection to the gods, they could have seen the future of their empire, perhaps even shaped it, and witnessed the rise and fall of different kingdoms, altering Egypt's destiny according to their will. The ancient Egyptians were keenly aware of the cyclical nature of life and death, and it's possible that they viewed time as a loop, a constant cycle of renewal. If the soul could travel through time in the afterlife, perhaps the Egyptians saw time itself as fluid, an endless circle of existence that could be navigated, bent, and explored through spiritual rituals. Could these rituals have been designed to manipulate time, allowing the soul to move between past, present, and future? As we think about these ideas, we have to wonder, could time travel have been something that was always inherent in the Egyptian worldview, simply waiting to be unlocked? If the afterlife was a place where time wasn't bound by the same rules that govern our reality, could the priests and pharaohs have used their sacred knowledge to access that realm while alive, witnessing events across time, as if they were just pages in a book? As we continue to explore these possibilities, we can help but wonder how the ancient Egyptian belief in immortality might have led them to develop a time travel philosophy that we can only begin to fathom. Could they have known something about time that has been lost to history? What if time, in their view, wasn't something to be feared or avoided, but rather something to be understood, explored, and controlled? The mysteries of the afterlife and time travel may remain unsolved for now, but as we look back at the Egyptians' incredible achievements, we cannot help but feel that their understanding of time was far more complex than we ever imagined. Could the Egyptians have mastered time travel, allowing them to shape their own fate and ensure that Egypt's glory would live on for eternity? Now that we've explored the spiritual and mystical realms of time manipulation, let us turn our attention to one of the most iconic and fascinating aspects of ancient Egypt, its technological marvels. Egypt, as we know, was a land of innovation, from the grandeur of the pyramids to the creation of some of the most advanced engineering feats in human history. But what if the Egyptians weren't just remarkable architects and scientists, but also had the knowledge and tools to manipulate time itself? Could their advancements in architecture, engineering, and astronomy have been designed not just to shape the physical world, but to alter the very fabric of time? The Great Pyramid of Giza is perhaps one of the most famous and mysterious symbols of Egyptian ingenuity. It's perfectly aligned with the stars and built with such precision that modern scientists still marvel at its construction. But could there have been more to the pyramid than just a tomb for the pharaoh? Some researchers have suggested that the pyramids were not just monuments to the gods, but also cosmic machines, devices designed to harness cosmic energy and perhaps even manipulate time. What if the pyramids were created not just to mark the pharaoh's eternal existence, but to serve as gateways, allowing the pharaoh to access different times and dimensions? Imagine standing in the shadow of the Great Pyramid. The sun is beginning to set, casting long shadows across the desert. You can feel the weight of history around you, but there's something almost otherworldly about the structure. It's not just a monument. It's alive, pulsing with the energy of the universe. As you walk closer, you feel as though the air itself is vibrating, and suddenly you're no longer in the present. You've been transported to another time, perhaps the distant future or the distant past. Could the pyramid, with its precise astronomical alignments and mysterious internal chambers, have acted as a device for temporal navigation? Historians have long speculated about the true purpose of the pyramids. Some believe they were designed as tombs for the pharaohs. Others think they served as astronomical observatories or ritual spaces. But what if the pyramids were also linked to time travel? The Egyptians believed that the pharaoh's soul would ascend to the heavens to join the gods after death. What if the pyramid was the portal through which this ascension took place, not just in the afterlife, but across different eras? If the pharaohs were indeed masters of time, could the pyramids have been their way of controlling not just their spiritual journey, but their journey through the ages? One thing is certain: the Egyptians were deeply fascinated by the cosmos and the movement of the stars. Their understanding of astronomy was highly advanced for its time, and their alignment of structures like the Great Pyramid with the stars points to a profound knowledge of celestial mechanics. Could the Egyptians have used this knowledge to predict the future, or even to travel to different points in time, just as they charted the movements of the stars? It's a tantalizing idea, one that suggests that the Egyptians may have embedded the key to time travel into their grandest structures. But of course, the pyramids weren't the only incredible technological marvels the Egyptians created. Their understanding of mathematics, engineering, and architecture was revolutionary. Could these innovations have been used to construct devices, not just physical machines, but tools that could allow one to navigate through time? We've all heard about the incredible precision with which the Egyptians built their monuments, and their ability to measure the stars and calculate distances across vast expanses of land. What if their advanced engineering techniques were actually the key to unlocking time manipulation? As we continue our journey through this world of mystical time travel and ancient knowledge, consider this. The Egyptians believed that the gods had gifted them with wisdom that was far beyond anything the rest of the world knew. Their deep understanding of natural laws, their mystical beliefs, and their architectural prowess may have been tied together in ways we can't yet fully comprehend. Could time travel have been one of these divine gifts, a sacred tool given to the pharaohs and their priests, allowing them to manipulate time for the benefit of Egypt? If the Egyptians had such knowledge, how did they view time? They didn't think of it in the same way we do today. For them, time was more of a cycle, repeating and intertwining with eternity. The afterlife was a form of timelessness, a place where the soul existed in an endless state of being. Could the Egyptians have believed that by mastering time, they could tap into the eternal flow of existence and access other timelines, experiencing multiple epochs or even altering history itself? As we look deeper into their advancements in mathematics and engineering, it becomes clear that the Egyptians were not just concerned with building great monuments. They were mastering the forces of the universe. What if, through their incredible precision and understanding of geometry, they were able to unlock the secrets of time, creating not just physical structures, but spiritual and temporal portals that allowed them to navigate time and space in ways we cannot yet imagine. The possibility that the Egyptians might have used their technological prowess to manipulate time isn't as far-fetched as it may seem. Time travel could have been woven into their very understanding of the universe, giving them the ability to move through time just as they move through the celestial cycles of the stars. The secrets of time may have been buried within their greatest structures, waiting to be uncovered by those who possess the wisdom to see beyond the surface. As we continue our exploration into how the ancient Egyptians could have used time travel, we must now consider one of the most iconic elements of their culture, their mysterious and sacred texts. The Egyptians were masters of written language, especially in the form of hieroglyphs, which they used to record everything from royal decrees to religious rituals. But what if these sacred writings held more than just historical facts and spiritual teachings? What if the ancient Egyptian texts contained encoded messages about time travel, hidden in plain sight, waiting for the right minds to decipher them? One of the most famous Egyptian texts is the Book of the Dead, a guide for the deceased soul on its journey through the afterlife. The book, filled with detailed descriptions of divine judgment and mystical journeys, also hints at the idea of moving through different realms, a concept that could be closely related to time travel. The text describes a journey through the underworld where the soul must pass through various gates, each one governed by a different god. Could these gates represent temporal boundaries, each one transporting the soul to a different period of time? Or could they even be seen as metaphors for accessing different eras in Egyptian history? Historians still debate whether the Book of the Dead was simply a guide for the soul's spiritual journey, or if it contained deeper wisdom about the nature of time itself. Some scholars believe that the Egyptians' understanding of time was deeply connected to their cosmology, where time wasn't a straightforward, linear progression, but rather something that could be traversed and manipulated. If the gods were thought to exist outside of time, then perhaps the priests and pharaohs, as the living gods on earth, had access to divine knowledge that allowed them to travel through different periods of time, just as the soul travels through the afterlife. But what if time travel wasn't just about the journey of the soul? What if the Egyptian texts were also blueprints for manipulating history, for rewriting the past or predicting the future? The Egyptians were known for their astrological knowledge and their ability to track the movement of the stars and planets with incredible precision. Could these astronomical records have been more than just a means of measuring the passage of time? Could they have been keys to unlocking temporal gates, portals that allowed the Egyptians to travel across time? Some researchers even argue that the alignment of the pyramids with certain celestial bodies was not just an act of religious devotion, but a code designed to unlock the mysteries of time and space. The idea of using written texts as a form of time travel is intriguing. The Egyptians weren't the only ancient civilization to embed hidden knowledge in their writings. The ancient Greeks, for example, had texts that contained cryptic references to alternate realities and the manipulation of time. Could the Egyptians have done the same? Could their most sacred texts contain secret passages designed not just to guide the soul to the afterlife, but to provide a pathway through time, allowing the pharaohs, priests, and chosen individuals to travel across different epochs? Let's consider the Temple of Abydos, one of the most ancient and sacred sites in Egypt. The walls of this temple are covered in mysterious hieroglyphs, many of which appear to be out of place or anachronistic, showing images of technologies and symbols that didn't exist in the time they were written. Some have speculated that these strange carvings could be evidence of time travelers, individuals from the future who left their mark in the ancient world. Could these hieroglyphs be a clue to the Egyptians' understanding of time travel? Did they know that the future was not a fixed point, but a fluid space that could be accessed through sacred rituals and divine knowledge? In these sacred temples, the Egyptians practiced rituals that were believed to align their spirits with the cosmic forces, the sun, the moon, and the stars. These rituals were so precise that they could mark the exact moment of the rising of the Nile, the changing of the seasons, and the timing of religious festivals. But could these rituals have been designed to do more than just align with the heavens? Could they have been part of a greater cosmic plan, one that allowed the priests and pharaohs to step outside of linear time and access other periods of Egyptian history, both past and future? Imagine, if you will, an Egyptian priest standing in the dim light of a temple, the walls covered in hieroglyphs. As he speaks the sacred words, he feels himself transcend the physical world, his consciousness leaving his body as he travels through time, visiting the past to witness the construction of the Great Pyramid, or traveling to the future to see the fall of his civilization. What if the rituals of the Egyptians weren't just about honoring the gods, but about accessing different points in time, moving between epochs with the power of sacred knowledge? The Book of the Dead and other Egyptian texts may have been the key to understanding this power. What if the Egyptians' belief in the afterlife wasn't just about spiritual immortality, but about time travel? A journey through the ages where the soul could witness the rise and fall of empires, the events that shaped history, and the moments that defined the future of Egypt. If the priests had access to this knowledge, would they have used it to alter Egypt's destiny, influencing the course of the pharaoh's reign and ensuring Egypt's eternal dominance? So, as we look at the sacred texts of Egypt, we must ask, could these texts be time travel blueprints, hidden within the words and hieroglyphs, waiting for those with the right knowledge to unlock them? Could the Egyptians, with their deep understanding of the divine and the cosmos, have discovered the secrets of time itself and used them to shape their world across millennia? As we delve deeper into the mysteries of time travel in ancient Egypt, it becomes clear that the Egyptians' understanding of time and space was deeply connected to their religious beliefs and rituals. However, it is not just their spiritual practices that hint at the possibility of time travel. Egyptian art and architecture may hold the key to understanding how they viewed and potentially manipulated time. Consider the pyramids, which we've already touched upon. These massive structures, some of the greatest engineering feats in human history, were built with such precision that they continue to amaze modern archaeologists. Their alignments with celestial bodies, such as the star Sirius, raise important questions. Could the Egyptians have used these architectural wonders to tap into cosmic forces, perhaps even using them as vessels or tools for navigating time? The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, is aligned so precisely with the cardinal points of the compass that modern builders still struggle to replicate such accuracy. What if this precision wasn't just about worship or geography? What if it was part of a much larger cosmic plan? A plan that allowed the pharaohs and high priests to harness time itself through these colossal structures. Could the pyramids have been designed to act as portals or focal points, channeling the energy of the cosmos and perhaps even allowing access to different points in time? Now imagine the pharaoh standing at the top of the Great Pyramid. The sun is setting, casting long shadows across the land, and the pharaoh feels the immense weight of Egypt's future resting on his shoulders. Could he, by standing at this sacred point, open a gateway through time, allowing him to witness the rise and fall of civilizations, or perhaps glimpse the future of his own kingdom? Could the pyramids serve as a beacon for those with the knowledge to tap into the flow of time, allowing them to navigate history with ease? This concept of time manipulation through architecture isn't as far-fetched as it may sound. Throughout history, various cultures have used sacred spaces and structures to align themselves with cosmic cycles. The Egyptians, with their profound understanding of astronomy and geometry, might have been aware of the potential power of these structures, recognizing that time, like the movement of the stars, could be navigated and manipulated. But what if this manipulation wasn't just about future predictions or glimpses of the past? What if the gods themselves, as the Egyptians believed, had access to the ultimate power of time? The gods were thought to live in realms beyond time, timeless and eternal. Could they have shared their divine knowledge with the pharaohs, granting them the ability to navigate through time as easily as they navigated the Nile? Beyond the physical architecture, Egyptian art, particularly the hieroglyphs, may hold the answer. The Egyptians used these symbols to record everything from royal decrees to spiritual rituals. But could they have also used hieroglyphs to document time travel? Consider the wall carvings found in Egyptian tombs. They are often intricate and symbolic, conveying not only the history of the pharaohs, but also their journey to the afterlife. What if some of these carvings, far from simply being representations of the afterlife, were actually depictions of time travel, depicting a pharaoh or priest traveling through different eras? Think about the afterlife journey depicted in the Book of the Dead. In this journey, the soul must pass through different stages of judgment, encountering various gods and obstacles along the way. What if these stages represented different points in time, each step on the journey allowing the soul to access a different time period, past or future? Perhaps the Egyptians saw the afterlife not just as a spiritual realm, but as a timeless experience, an eternal journey through different realities. In fact, the belief in timelessness could have been a driving force behind the Egyptians' obsession with the eternity of the soul. The idea that the soul could move beyond time suggests that the Egyptians understood time as something far more fluid than we do today. Time, for them, wasn't simply a linear progression from the past to the present to the future. Instead, it may have been a continuum where the soul could traverse different timelines, experiencing multiple realities, and perhaps even changing the course of history. But here's where things get really fascinating. The hieroglyphs were not just an artistic medium, they were also a form of communication with the divine. The Egyptians believed that their gods could be communicated with through these symbols, and that the gods had the power to influence the flow of time. Could these ancient symbols, inscribed on temple walls or tombs, contain hidden knowledge about time travel passed down by the gods themselves? Could these symbols act as coordinates, guiding the soul through different timelines, or perhaps even serving as instructions for the pharaoh to alter the course of his reign? What if the hieroglyphs, with their seemingly cryptic and mysterious meanings, were more than just records of past events? What if they were maps to different times, hidden pathways that only the initiated could understand? These symbols may have contained not just the history of Egypt, but the secrets of time, secrets that allowed the pharaohs and their priests to manipulate time as they saw fit. So as we look at the architecture and art of Egypt, we begin to see that the potential for time travel wasn't just about mystical rituals or divine intervention. It was also embedded in the very fabric of Egyptian culture. From the pyramids to the hieroglyphs to the rituals of the priests, the Egyptians may have used every tool at their disposal to not only understand time, but to manipulate it. Could they have known the secrets of time travel hidden within the stones and symbols of their civilization? The more we explore, the more it seems that the Egyptians may have had the ability to not only witness time, but to reshape it. As we continue our exploration of the potential for time travel in ancient Egypt, it's essential to consider how their profound understanding of cosmic cycles could have shaped their interaction with time. The Egyptians didn't see time as a straightforward sequence of events, but rather as a cyclical process governed by divine principles and the movement of celestial bodies. They believed that everything, from the rise of the sun to the flooding of the Nile, was part of an eternal cycle, repeating in an unbroken loop. Could this cyclical understanding of time have given the Egyptians the ability to navigate these cycles, allowing them to move through time as easily as they moved through the seasons? The Egyptians were deeply connected to the natural rhythms of the earth. Their understanding of time was intrinsically linked to their agricultural practices, especially the flooding of the Nile, which was the lifeblood of their civilization. This annual event was seen not just as a physical occurrence, but as part of a larger cosmic order, with the Nile itself being considered a divine force that connected the land to the heavens. Could the pharaohs have used this cyclical view of time to influence the future? Perhaps they saw themselves not just as rulers of Egypt, but as custodians of time, able to navigate through different periods of their civilization by aligning themselves with these cosmic cycles. Imagine the pharaoh standing on the banks of the Nile, watching the annual floodwaters rise. This event, which dictated the agricultural success of Egypt, was a symbol of renewal, a reminder that time was not just linear, but cyclical, always returning to the beginning. What if the pharaohs, understanding this cosmic rhythm, had the ability to sync with these cycles, using the flow of the Nile to access different points in time? They could move backward to witness the great moments of Egypt's past, or move forward to glimpse the future, seeing how their kingdom would fare in centuries to come. Historians still argue about the Egyptians' view of time. Was it purely cyclical, or did they see it as a more linear progression? The answer might lie in their cosmology, which suggests that time was not something to be controlled or manipulated, but something to be understood and embraced. If the pharaohs and their priests believed that time itself was a divine force, could they have used their spiritual practices to access different points in time, moving between past and future with ease? The Egyptians weren't just concerned with the physical world. They believed that the spiritual realm was just as real and tangible as the world they inhabited. The afterlife, in particular, was seen as a continuation of the soul's journey, where the soul could experience not just spiritual rebirth, but perhaps even temporal rebirth, a chance to live through different historical periods, experiencing various realities. This concept aligns perfectly with the idea of time travel. The Egyptians believed that the soul could transcend linear time, moving freely through past and future, experiencing different versions of reality. If time travel was indeed embedded within the Egyptian worldview, it would not have been for the faint-hearted. The Egyptians believed that meddling with the forces of time could lead to catastrophic consequences. The gods, they thought, were the ultimate masters of time and space. They were the ones who ensured the cycles of life and death continued unhindered, maintaining the balance of the universe. So, what would happen if mortals, like the pharaohs and priests, tried to bend the flow of time to their will? Would the gods intervene, maintaining the cosmic order, or would they allow these temporal wanderings, letting the pharaohs control the course of history? As we explore the possibilities of time travel within the context of ancient Egypt, we must also ask ourselves, could the temples and sacred spaces of Egypt have been designed as portals to different times? Many of these temples were not just places of worship. They were believed to be powerful centers of cosmic energy, where the divine and mortal realms intersected. Could the geometry and astronomical alignments of these temples have allowed the priests to access other points in time? What if the design of this temple, along with its rituals, wasn't just meant to honor the gods, but to unlock the flow of time? The priests who entered this sacred space may not have just been performing rituals. They may have been accessing different timelines, experiencing past events, and even shaping future outcomes. Could the Nile River, the lifeblood of Egypt, have been more than just a physical body of water? Could it have been a symbol of time itself, flowing eternally and allowing those with the right knowledge to navigate through the ages? What if the pharaohs and priests understood that the river's flow was symbolic of the flow of time, and that by aligning themselves with it, they could move through time just as easily as the water flowed toward the sea? As we continue, let's keep in mind that the Egyptians weren't just masters of architecture and engineering, they were also masters of time. Their understanding of the cosmos, their connection to the divine, and their deep belief in eternity could have given them the keys to unlock the secrets of time travel, allowing them to transcend the limitations of linear history and enter into an eternal cyclical dance with the universe. Could they have used their divine connection to time travel to witness the rise of empires, prevent catastrophes, or even shape the future of their civilization? The possibilities are endless, and the more we explore, the more it becomes clear that the ancient Egyptians may have had access to a form of time travel far beyond what we can imagine today. Whether through rituals, architecture, or their profound connection to the divine, the Egyptians may have understood time as something that could be navigated, manipulated, and even mastered. A power that only the gods and the pharaohs could wield. As we continue to peel back the layers of ancient Egyptian society, let's explore another intriguing aspect of their culture that might have hinted at their potential ability to manipulate time: the rituals and artifacts they left behind. The Egyptians were known for their meticulous attention to detail in their spiritual and ceremonial practices, many of which seem to hint at a deeper understanding of the cosmos and time itself. But what if these rituals were not merely ceremonial? What if they held the key to time travel, the tools that allowed the pharaohs and priests to tap into a temporal realm beyond our comprehension? Consider the ancient Egyptian practice of mummification. To modern eyes, mummification might seem like a practice solely dedicated to preserving the body for the afterlife. But the Egyptians didn't just seek to preserve the body, they believed that in doing so, they were preserving the soul's ability to travel through time. The mummified body was thought to be eternally preserved, allowing the deceased to remain present in future timelines. But this raises a fascinating question. Could mummification have been more than just a way of preserving physical bodies? Could it have been an ancient attempt to preserve not just the soul's journey into the afterlife, but to anchor the soul in different periods of time? Imagine for a moment the mummified pharaoh lying in his tomb. The priests carefully perform the final rites, ensuring that his spirit is bound to eternity. But what if the ritual wasn't just about preserving the pharaoh's body, it was about preserving his soul, as connection to all time? Perhaps the very act of mummification allowed the pharaoh's spirit to travel between different timelines, moving seamlessly from past to future, witnessing the rise and fall of empires, and even altering his own legacy in the process. Historians still argue over the deeper meanings of mummification, but what if this ritual was an early form of temporal preservation? The Egyptians believed that the gods had the power to move through time freely, shaping the destiny of the world. Could the pharaoh, as the god-king, have accessed the same powers, moving through different eras of Egyptian history, witnessing the key events that shaped Egypt's rise and fall? If the pharaoh's soul could travel freely through time, what would prevent him from shaping his own future by revisiting the past? But mummification was not just reserved for the pharaohs. Ordinary Egyptians were also mummified in an attempt to preserve their souls and their connection to the afterlife. This universal practice suggests that the Egyptians believed in a shared connection to the flow of time, a cosmic journey that every soul could participate in, regardless of rank or status. Could the rituals of mummification have been the Egyptians' way of ensuring that all souls, regardless of their place in history, could travel freely through time in the afterlife? Beyond mummification, Another fascinating artifact from ancient Egypt that could hint at time travel is the ancient Egyptian clock. The Egyptians were one of the first civilizations to develop a system for measuring time with incredible precision. They used water clocks and sundials, which not only allowed them to measure time during the day, but also track the movement of the stars at night. The Egyptians were obsessed with the cycles of nature, the movement of the sun and moon, the flooding of the Nile, the changing of the seasons, and they saw these cosmic cycles as part of a greater universal rhythm. Could the Egyptian clock have been more than just a tool for tracking hours and minutes? What if it was a way to measure the movement of time itself, allowing them to not only track but navigate time? Let's picture the scene. It's a quiet night in ancient Egypt, and you're standing in a temple near the banks of the Nile. A priest, dressed in fine linen, stands before a water clock. The device measures time by the steady drip of water, and as it flows, the priest watches as the stars shift across the sky. The Egyptians were highly attuned to the movement of celestial bodies, and they believed that these movements had a direct impact on the flow of time. Could this clock have been used to align the priests with the cosmic rhythm of time, allowing them to move freely across different periods of Egyptian history, or even peek into the future? Some modern scholars suggest that the Egyptians were aware of the fluidity of time, how it ebbed and flowed in a cyclical nature, rather than being a fixed, linear progression. Could their timekeeping devices have been designed not just to measure time, but to map it, creating a way for the priests and pharaohs to access different moments in time with the right rituals and knowledge? These artifacts, water clocks, sundials, and mummification rites, are more than just relics of an ancient civilization. They represent the Egyptians' understanding of time as a force, a power that could be measured, controlled, and perhaps even manipulated. The pharaohs, with their divine connection to the gods, may have used these tools to navigate through time, ensuring that Egypt remained the center of the world for eternity. Could these time-keeping devices, combined with rituals and sacred texts, have been the key to unlocking time travel, allowing Egypt's rulers to shape history as they saw fit? The more we examine the artifacts and rituals of ancient Egypt, the more it becomes clear that the Egyptians saw time as a fluid and powerful force, one that could be harnessed for both spiritual and temporal manipulation. Could their obsession with immortality, their rituals, and their advanced understanding of the heavens have been part of a larger plan? A plan that allowed them to travel through time, ensuring Egypt's eternal dominance and the pharaoh's lasting legacy. As we continue exploring the fascinating possibilities of time travel in ancient Egypt, let's now consider a crucial question. If the pharaohs, priests, and perhaps even ordinary Egyptians had access to time travel, what impact would it have had on Egypt's historical destiny? Would this power have ensured Egypt's dominance over the centuries? Or would it have ultimately resulted in unforeseen consequences that led to their downfall? This section will examine how the Egyptians might have used time manipulation to shape their future, and the dangers they may have faced in the process. The pharaoh, as the living representative of the gods, wielded immense power. But what if that power extended beyond earthly matters? What if it reached into the realms of time itself? The pharaohs were often seen as the central figures in maintaining cosmic order. Could they have used their divine knowledge to manipulate the flow of time, ensuring that Egypt's rise never faltered, its enemies were always defeated, and its legacy would echo through eternity? Let's imagine that the pharaoh, after witnessing the future, returns to his time with a vision of Egypt's downfall, knowing that the empire will collapse in the coming centuries. Could he, with this knowledge, alter the course of history to prevent this? Perhaps he could pass laws that ensure the prosperity of Egypt, shifting alliances, or even controlling the military in ways that would guarantee Egypt's survival. The Pharaoh, with his godly connection to the divine and his access to time itself, could have seen events unfold and decided to intervene, using temporal knowledge to ensure Egypt's eternal reign. But with such immense power comes the potential for misuse. If the Pharaoh's ability to travel through time was used for personal gain, or to reshape history for his own benefit, would the gods have allowed it? In the Egyptian worldview, the gods were the ultimate arbiters of fate, and any mortal who tried to alter the natural course of events was in danger of invoking their wrath. Could the Pharaoh, in attempting to reshape Egypt's destiny, have angered the gods, leading to divine intervention that would undo the changes he tried to make? Let's pause here and think about this for a moment. If the Pharaoh had the ability to manipulate time, what ethical dilemmas would arise? Could he justify altering events to ensure Egypt's survival, knowing that his actions might destroy the natural flow of the universe? Time travel, in this context, could have been as much a curse as it was a gift, forcing the Pharaoh to grapple with the responsibility of knowing the future and attempting to change it. There's another layer to this as well. Could the Pharaoh have traveled back in time to revisit his own ancestors, perhaps even taking advice from previous rulers to strengthen his rule? Imagine a Pharaoh stepping back into the past, meeting the rulers who built the pyramids and learning their secrets for sustaining Egypt's glory. What if the Pharaoh's decisions in the past changed the way history unfolded? Could he have learned from Egypt's golden age, only to bring those lessons into the present to ensure Egypt's eternal power? But what if, in this attempt to change history, the Pharaoh's actions created unintended consequences? Could his interference with the flow of time have created a time paradox where the future becomes a mirror of the past, where Egypt's greatness is not assured after all? Time travel, while a tool for incredible power, could have unleashed chaos in ways the Pharaoh could not control, throwing Egypt into unpredictable futures and leading to an eventual downfall despite the Pharaoh's best efforts. As historians still argue about the nature of Egyptian power and the role of the pharaohs, we must wonder, what if time travel was not just a theory, but a reality? Could it have been the ultimate tool for pharaohs to manipulate their destiny? Or could it have been a dangerous path that led them away from the natural flow of time, creating a disruption that the gods could not allow? The possibility of altering time brings us to another fascinating question. Could the gods of Egypt, in their eternal wisdom, have forbidden time manipulation altogether? The gods were believed to have created the world in perfect balance, with each event occurring at its appointed time. Could they have seen the pharaoh's attempt to alter time itself as an act of hubris, one that threatened the very balance of the cosmos? What if, in their infinite power, the gods decided to intervene, preventing the pharaohs from gaining access to time travel in the first place? Perhaps the Egyptians were aware of the risks of tampering with time, which is why they only hinted at its existence in their sacred texts and rituals, keeping the knowledge of time manipulation hidden from all but the highest-ranking priests and pharaohs. The Egyptians were well aware of the fine line between divine power and mortal arrogance, and perhaps the ultimate lesson of time travel in ancient Egypt is the balance between fate and free will. Even with access to the most advanced knowledge, could the pharaohs ever truly control time, or was time always the domain of the gods? As we draw closer to the end of our journey, think about the lessons the pharaohs might have learned. They believed they were the living gods on earth, but could their manipulation of time have been the one thing even they couldn't control? Perhaps the ultimate truth of time travel in ancient Egypt is not that it existed, but that even the most powerful of rulers must submit to the forces of the universe, accepting that time, just like life, is a force greater than any one person, even the pharaoh. As we near the conclusion of our exploration into time travel in ancient Egypt, it's time to reflect on the lasting impact these time-altering possibilities might have had on the Egyptians' culture, their perception of immortality, and their relationship with the divine. The pharaohs, with their extraordinary divine power, were seen as the bridge between the gods and the people of Egypt. They didn't just rule, they were gods on earth, and their connection to the divine world was thought to extend beyond the physical realm. But could their divine status have been used for something far greater? Could it have granted them the ability to wield time itself, moving freely through the ages, bending history, and influencing the destiny of their kingdom? The more we consider the possibility of time travel, the more we realize that the Egyptians' view of immortality was tied to their concept of time. The belief in the eternity of the Pharaoh's reign wasn't just about spiritual continuity, it was about transcending time. The pharaohs, by virtue of their godly status, were believed to have access to divine knowledge, including the secrets of eternal life. But what if their immortality did not just refer to their spiritual journey after death? It referred to their ability to move through time. If the pharaohs could witness the future and shape the past, they wouldn't just have eternal rule, they would have eternal influence over the course of history. Think about the gods in the Egyptian pantheon, Ra, Osiris, and Horus. These gods were eternal, living outside the bounds of time, and their powers were seen as limitless. But what if these gods weren't just symbols of divine power? What if they were master manipulators of time? If the pharaohs were their earthly representatives, perhaps the pharaohs were able to access divine knowledge that granted them the ability to influence time, shifting history as they saw fit. The notion of immortality in ancient Egypt was intricately tied to the idea of eternity, and the pharaoh's quest for eternal life was a quest to transcend not just death, but also time. By manipulating time, the pharaohs would not only secure their immortal reign, but also ensure Egypt's place as the dominant power of the ancient world. But here's the paradox. If the pharaohs had the ability to alter time, how could they be certain that their interventions would not create unintended consequences? Could they accidentally change history, causing Egypt's decline, even if they were trying to preserve it? Consider the idea of a time loop. What if the pharaohs, in their efforts to reshape history, found themselves caught in an endless cycle, where their attempts to alter time kept them trapped in the same series of events? Could the very act of changing history have created a temporal paradox, where the pharaohs were doomed to repeat the same mistakes? Could their desire for immortality have been the cause of Egypt's collapse, not because of outside invaders or internal strife, but because the pharaohs' attempts to control time disrupted the natural flow of history? The idea of time travel in ancient Egypt raises fascinating questions, not just about their understanding of the past and future, but about the nature of power itself. Time is the ultimate force, one that cannot be controlled forever. Could the pharaohs' divine connection to time have eventually led them to abandon the pursuit of immortality, realizing that time itself was a force that couldn't be manipulated without consequences? The Egyptians believed that the gods governed all things, including time, and perhaps the ultimate lesson here is that even the gods cannot control time indefinitely. As we continue to reflect on the implications of time travel in ancient Egypt, think about how this knowledge would have affected the daily lives of the Egyptian people. If the pharaohs and priests could move freely through time, what would have been the impact on the ordinary Egyptians? Would they have been aware of the time-altering power of their rulers, or would they have believed that their leaders were divinely protected and free from the constraints of time? The Egyptians had a profound respect for their pharaohs, and perhaps this divine connection to time reinforced the pharaohs' status as gods, further cementing their control over the land. At the heart of all of this lies the question of balance. The Egyptians were deeply concerned with maintaining Ma'at, the cosmic balance of the universe. The pharaohs were responsible for maintaining this balance on Earth, ensuring that everything functioned harmoniously. But could time travel, with its potential for disruption, have been a violation of this balance? If the pharaohs had the power to alter the course of history, could their actions have upset the natural order of things? The Egyptians believed that the gods ensured balance in the universe, but if humans, no matter how divine, could manipulate time, would this imbalance eventually consume Egypt? We've seen how the pharaohs' desire for eternal life might have been tied to their ability to manipulate time. But what if the ultimate goal was not to change time, but to understand it? The pharaohs and priests might not have seen time as something to be controlled, but as something to be respected. By tapping into the mysteries of the cosmos, they might have sought not to alter the past or future, but to align themselves with the flow of time, ensuring their place in the eternal cycles of existence. As we near the conclusion of our journey, we must ask ourselves, did the Egyptians unlock the secrets of time? Or was their knowledge simply a metaphor for their desire to understand the eternal, to control their fate, and to maintain the balance of the universe? Time travel in their world may not have been about moving from one point to another, but about moving within the natural flow of time, understanding it and living in harmony with it. As we conclude our journey through the ancient Egyptian concept of time travel, we must reflect on the larger implications of this ancient civilization's relationship with time. While we've explored how the pharaohs, priests, and even common people might have had access to time-altering rituals and cosmic knowledge, it is essential to understand how this manipulation of time could have ultimately shaped Egypt's fate both in the present and in the future. Could the Egyptians have understood that time itself was not something to master, but something to coexist with? If they did, what lessons can we take from their understanding of time and how it influenced their civilization? The ancient Egyptians were obsessed with the idea of eternity, not just in the spiritual sense, but in the temporal sense. They sought to ensure their kingdom's enduring power, not just through military might or political alliances, but through a deep understanding of cosmic cycles and the flow of time. If they believed that time was a force to be manipulated, perhaps they also understood the inherent risks of meddling with something as powerful and elusive as time itself. For the pharaohs, who were considered to be gods on earth, their role was to uphold Ma'at, the concept of cosmic balance. The pharaoh was not just a ruler, but a cosmic mediator, ensuring that the forces of order, chaos, life, and death were in balance. What if their understanding of time was an extension of this responsibility? Time itself, in this context, was not a mere human construct. It was a divine rhythm, one that the pharaohs were tasked with understanding and maintaining. By using their connection to the gods, the pharaohs may have attempted to align themselves with this divine flow of time, ensuring that Egypt would continue to thrive through the ages. But in doing so, they could have been walking a fine line, treading carefully between order and chaos. As we've seen, the ancient Egyptians had an intricate and complex relationship with the afterlife. And in many ways, their view of the afterlife reflects their understanding of time. The afterlife wasn't just a spiritual realm, it was a timeless space, a place where the soul could transcend the linear progression of time. Could the Egyptians have viewed the afterlife as a form of time travel? After all, the soul was believed to travel through different realms after death, witnessing different versions of reality. If the afterlife was a place where time didn't exist in the same way it does on Earth, could the Egyptians have used their spiritual knowledge to access the past and future, experiencing multiple timelines and shaping their fates in ways they couldn't do while alive? Perhaps the real key to understanding Egyptian time travel lies not in their physical structures or rituals, but in their philosophical and spiritual worldview. They didn't just see themselves as mere mortals at the mercy of time. They believed that, through their connection to the divine, they could transcend linear time and access the eternal, a state where time, death, and rebirth all converged. This idea of eternity, a continuous cyclical process, could have allowed the pharaohs to navigate through time without the limitations we face today. They could have moved through the ages, experiencing different points in history, altering or shaping Egypt's future as they saw fit. But with this power came a responsibility that the pharaohs might not have fully understood. Tampering with time, even with the best intentions, could have unintended consequences. The Egyptians' belief in the gods' control over the cosmos suggests that any attempt to manipulate time might have been seen as an act of hubris, a challenge to the natural order of the universe. Perhaps the gods themselves would have intervened, restoring balance by ensuring that the flow of time could not be altered by mere mortals. Ultimately, we must ask ourselves, what if the Egyptians' knowledge of time was not meant to give them control over history, but to allow them to understand it, to see time as a force they could work with, rather than a force they could dominate? Time, for the Egyptians, might have been less about manipulation and more about acceptance, an understanding that the flow of time, like the flow of the Nile, was a natural force that needed to be respected. In a way, this might be the ultimate lesson from the ancient Egyptians. Time cannot be controlled, but it can be understood and coexisted with. Their knowledge of time, however advanced it may have been, was perhaps intended to give them the wisdom to live in harmony with the eternal cycles of the universe, rather than trying to alter them. Their civilization, at its height, was one of balance, order, and eternity, and it was these principles that ensured Egypt's lasting legacy. As we bring this exploration to a close, consider this. The Egyptians didn't just build monuments or write hieroglyphs. They created a civilization that was deeply in tune with the cosmic rhythms of the universe. The pharaohs and priests were the stewards of time, maintaining the balance of the universe and ensuring Egypt's place in history. Perhaps the greatest secret of the Egyptians' power was not their ability to manipulate time, but their profound understanding of it, a timeless wisdom that transcended the limits of human knowledge and connected them to the eternal flow of the cosmos.